Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Owning It. I am your host, Paya Vu, the founder of Your Own Pathway, and I'm excited to have my next guest. Your Own Pathway and Owning It. I love to talk to people who are making a difference, who are innovating, and who are curse breakers and just challenging the status quo. And my next guest is about innovation. And so, everybody, please welcome Mike Todasco. Did I say it right?
You got it.
Awesome. I thought of
No,
Tabasco and then I'm like Todasco. So, yeah.
Paia, if you call me Tabasco, I would respond to it. But yeah, that's all I got called when I was a child. So like I know to just respond to it. Unfortunately, we don't have the Tabasco family money. If there is, I don't know if there is an actual Tabasco family.
If you're going to be called something, it might as well be something with season.
I like it. I like it.
You might as well be
No, glad to
seasoned.
be
At
here.
least it's not salt or pepper. It's something spicy. So,
I like it. Yes, yes. It's
yeah.
very, and let's make our talk very spicy today. Let's make it
Right.
spicy.
Awesome. So, before we recorded, you just came back from a very nice vacation and now you're back. Do you feel well rested?
Yeah, look, as much as having a vacation with two little kids in one room and all that you can be, like, yes, I am well rested. I was in Maui for a week, which is beautiful for folks who haven't been. I live in the Bay Area where now they have Southwest introduced flights. So whenever Southwest enters a new market, it makes it really cheap to go there.
Oh,
So I do encourage people to go check it out. It's beautiful. It's fun. It's a place that's very much recovering after the fires that they had from a couple of years ago. But like it is, it is a wonderful place to go, wonderful trip. And yes, I am recovered. So thank you.
good, good. And so right now you live in the Bay Area
Yeah,
and I'm from the Midwest. It's Minnesota. It's cold, and you are originally from the Midwest too.
Chicago. Yes.
Chicago. Okay. No feelings of wanting to return back with us in the Midwest at all, or
I mean, maybe like for a couple of weeks in April, I will come back for that. But outside of those few weeks, I'm very happy living in California. So no, look, I appreciate it all the time living here, and I always worry that my kids won't appreciate it because they've only known where it's like 60 degrees in winter and 80 degrees in the summer. They don't know, like they've never experienced humidity and stuff like that, and all these wonderful things I had growing up. But yeah, so they don't know how good they have it. When they go to college, I want to send them somewhere north, somewhere cold.
Mhm.
Uh, I want to ship them up to the Arctic or
Oh
something like that
yeah.
in college, and
Yeah.
let them really, and then they'll appreciate California after that. So
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, ship them to the tundra here.
that's
So
right. The Minnesota tundra. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so you're from Chicago and now you live in the Bay Area. How how did that happen?
Um, so after school, so I went to school at University of Illinois. Why did I go to school at University of Illinois? Um, it was a state school
Mhm.
and it didn't require an application. Or no, sorry. It didn't require an essay, I should say. There was still like a one-page application. That was all I had to do. I didn't know what I was doing for college. I applied to not Northwestern, geez, Northern Illinois University. Yeah, Northwestern required an application, and really, I did
Probably
not.
an essay or like recommendations too.
Yeah, yeah. No, there were no recommendations. No,
Really?
this was this was 1995 when I started school. Like it was completely different back then. Yeah, it was all ACT scores and your GPA. Like I don't think maybe I had recommendation. I honestly don't remember if I did. It wasn't, it was probably some random teacher or something that I had. I truly don't remember that. But yeah, I mean, so back in the olden days, that was it. You just went to school. I forgot how much it was, but like it was super inexpensive to go there. After school, I wanted to go somewhere other than Chicago. So I got a job in Cincinnati, um, working for GE. which was the most valuable company in the world at the time. Met my lovely wife there. Still married 21 years later. I have to look
We're
at the.
not testing you.
No, no, no.
I'm
Well, I mean, you can test
not
me like what
testing.
year
You
it
can say
is, and I'm like,
whatever, and
oh
I would
God, I
believe
don't know
you.
that. Like,
She may listen, but you know.
yeah. So so in Cincinnati, we always had a short list of places that we would go if we ever had an opportunity. And San Francisco, I had an uncle out here when I was a kid, and I remember traveling out here, and I always thought there were a lot of cool companies out here. I was always into technology, and it was always on the short list. And it was actually for my wife's job. She was working at Johnson and Johnson in Cincinnati at the
Mm.
time. Had an opportunity to move to a Johnson and Johnson business in the Bay Area where we live now, and it's been about 20 years that we've been here almost.
Wow. So like 2005, 2006 then.
Yeah, '06 was actually when we moved out here. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. Um, that doesn't seem that long ago to me, honestly. And then now
No, it
it's been
doesn't to
20
me either.
years.
I start to do the math on these. I love doing math on like how long ago things are. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was song from the 90s. That wasn't that long ago. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I always do the math. I'm like, oh God, that was 30 years ago.
I
And then I
know.
always like to do the math of like, well, what was 30 years before that? Yeah, I'm like, well, that goes to the 60s. And I'm like, in the 90s, if you would have said the 60s weren't that long ago to me, I would have been
No.
like, you're crazy. Like, and so like
Right.
that's the same point of reference. And, yeah.
I feel the same way too. And so you and your wife moved because of her job. And how was like the Bay Area around like almost 20 years ago, and how's it now?
Huh. There were still some like orchards, not many, but there were a few. I mean, because that's what the Bay Area was
Yeah.
around. There was a lot of like oranges and lemons and all this kind of stuff. Like there was a couple of them. Like now
Mhm.
there's basically none. But it was pretty tech focused, and like there were a lot of technology companies and things like that even back then.
Mhm.
Um, I went to school. I got my MBA up here at Berkeley, and I think 10% of my class worked at Cisco. It was an executive. It was a part-time MBA, so people were all working. And yeah, I mean, it was all a bunch of tech people that were working there. So like that hasn't changed.
Okay.
What has changed is I think the world's view about tech.
Mhm.
Dare I say tech's like influence in the world and
Yeah.
power and all that other kind of stuff. Like that, like I think in many ways the Bay Area is the same.
Mhm.
Um, just like where its place in the world is very different than 20 years ago.
Mhm. Yeah. So Berkeley, and you got your MBA, correct?
Yeah,
Okay. And
yeah,
Cisco, the phone company, correct?
yeah. Yeah. Cisco also one of the one-time most valuable company in the world for I think like 2 weeks was the most valuable company. Yeah, Cisco. Yeah, I didn't work at Cisco myself, so I actually continued to work at a company in Ohio. I was working for a paper company at the time when we
Paper?
moved out here,
Okay.
like literally Dunder Mifflin style paper and all that.
Okay.
Like couldn't get more old school than that. And to me, that was probably always one of the reasons why they hired me at Berkeley, or they accepted me at Berkeley. I felt because I had such a different background than all the other students there. Everybody
You were
else,
unique. You were
Cisco or
different.
eBay or Google or wherever, and I was working for a paper manufacturer. Like you couldn't get any more different than that. But it was fun. I mean, and it was fun to like hear all these different perspectives. I'd always been very much a fan and interested in tech, and it was cool to build up this network of friends in that area, and it was a cool experience going up there. It was an hour and a half bus ride, like each way, going up there twice a week to the Berkeley campus. But it was a super super fun, enlightening. And it's mostly about the relationships that you build with the other students on the way.
Mhm. So you work for a paper company, and so very
Yeah,
different from your classmates and the people you know.
yeah.
What do you think your advantage was because of that?
Oh, great question. Look, the advantage, I mean, it just gives you a completely different perspective. Um, I remember, so I was working for a paper company that was still based in Ohio. So we moved out here. My wife moved to a different part of Johnson and Johnson. I stayed working with the same company. I was one of those weird people working remotely in 2007, and all that. Definitely
Mhm.
before it was ever cool to do that. And it was a really eye-opening experience because the kind of things that the timelines are actually completely different.
Mhm.
People don't know this, but like so we made coated paper, which was like magazines and all that. Like if you get a
Wow.
direct mail piece and it's kind of shiny, that's what the company I was working for was making.
Oh.
These machines that make this paper, they can cost in the hundreds of millions of dollars to make one machine to make this paper. They're huge, huge, huge machines. And therefore, you want these machines to last a really long time. We had machines that were 100 years old that we were using. There was actually a competitor of ours that was in Europe. It was more niche. It had gone through many iterations, but the plant was from the 1500s. So like,
1500s?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was
Oh
crazy.
my
I never
god.
thought the thing. I would always I was doing a lot of strategy and competitive analysis was my job at the paper company. And so it was very interesting to go into this and like, oh my God, this thing's almost 500 years old.
Yeah.
That, and it's still, so it's a different type of time horizon that you think about versus tech, which it's hard, in technology, it is really hard to plan more than just a couple of years out,
Mhm.
especially today in the world of artificial intelligence. Like,
Yeah.
I have no idea what models will be capable of 12 months from now, let
Mhm.
alone like years from now. So that would be the one different perspective I would definitely think about. Like, it's weird. Like, working for an old world industry actually gave me a much longer time horizon to think about than in technology, where it's much more of the moment.
Mhm.
I think that's somewhat counterintuitive to actually think that that's like was one of the effects of that.
No, I can totally see that. I think in a way, correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of had to think outside of the box compared to maybe your colleagues because of what you just mentioned to me.
Yeah, I mean, I always, yeah, I think I always like, I don't know, I was always a weird kid in class, just generally speaking. Like,
Mhm.
and so maybe I just always did naturally do that. One of the things I was really focused on at the company when I
Mhm.
was at there, so I was actually I did competitive analysis, strategy, things like that for the paper company. And one of the roles that I took on was like, kind of, could we redefine our strategy? We owned a bunch of trees. Can we make our business about turning trees into stuff versus turning trees into paper? And when I say stuff, the one thing I was actually focused on was fuels. So could we actually turn tree into fuels? And so there was a project I was working on with a company in Sweden around that, and it was really promising. And we felt that there might be a way to just kind of shift the company, because I mean, it was clear to all of us as we look forward, like m- magazine usage, direct mail, catalogs, all of these things that were being used by consumers in 2007, it was clear that this was on a downward sloping curve. We saw
Mm.
it first with newsprint in the paper industry. Like, that was kind of the first thing to fall. This was going to be one of the next things to fall. And so, like, how do you manage through that? And so we got very focused on, oh my gosh, we could do this. I mean, trees are a renewable resource.
Mhm.
So could you actually turn trees into fuels? And so it was a very exciting project for me to work on. This was time of like Inconvenient Truth, the Al Gore movie, and like kind of the first, shift that I really saw in the mass public towards greenhouse gas emissions and the dangers of that and so forth. And this was actually a very sustainable way versus other fuels, even things like corn and ethanol, which were kind of popular, to be able to create fuels. So we're working on this project, 2007. Things are going wonderfully. Oil is like $150 a barrel. And then all of a sudden, the financial crisis hits. It
2008.
goes from $150 a barrel all the way down to, I don't know, 10, 2015. And then like the economics of this fall apart. We had to kill the project. I
Hmm.
left the company went bankrupt.
Oh gosh,
Yeah, all
wow.
this crazy stuff happened. Yeah. So yeah,
Oh
it
my
doesn't exist
goodness.
anymore. Yeah.
Wow. I graduated in 2008. So,
Ah, you were what a time to be coming out of school.
yeah, right. I graduated grad school in 2008 and it's funny, not funny, ironic and sad. With everything going on, I got my first job at the VA hospital.
Oh.
Uh-huh. With like the federal government and everything. And it was a safety net, and yet everybody else was like so afraid. I chose a major that needed help, but even with everything going on and layoffs and everything, you're talking about your layoff and how people are being laid off. It's scary, and yet I think all of this taught us something too. And what did it teach you? With being laid off and with like a new status? Like, did you have something waiting for you already, or did it kind of come like suddenly?
So I actually left before that at the company.
Okay.
So I was kind of clear to read the writing on the wall of like this wasn't going well. But that said, I left to actually go to a job where I was earning negative income because I started my own company out of so I was going to school part-time working for the paper company. Um, I was always very entrepreneurial, and I'm like I really wanted to start my own thing, and I did that out of so I basically graduated. I told my company I was leaving. They bankruptcy was probably within a year or 2 years from there. Um, and even though I did love the job, I'm like I wanted to start my own thing. So out of school I started my own business, took any savings and things like that I had, and plunged into this in a business that I was making negative dollars on for the next 2 years.
Okay. And what did
And the
you learn
business
about yourself? Yeah.
and sorry, what did I learn about myself? Yeah, I'm not actually answering the question. I'm just telling the story.
Oh no,
Um,
you can, yeah, tell a story too. Tell a story and then you can answer. Yeah.
yeah. No. So what did I learn? Look, I think when you start your own business, especially kind of doing a solopreneur, I did not try and raise venture funding or anything. And the business really quickly, it was a passion of mine. It was a marketplace for original comic book artwork, super niche, super focused. The whole theory I had at that time was that collectibles were underserved by things like eBay, which kind of seems crazy. Like, well, isn't that where everybody goes for that? Well, it sort of proved out. Like, there's, for shoes, for example, like StockX and Goat and all these other things have been able to serve people much better. They're niche sites for people who collect watches or whatever. And that was kind of the future that I saw back in 2009 when I started that. And I thought that this one area was like one where there's a real opportunity in that. And I had a real passion for it. Um, what did I learn about myself? I was just like, when you are the only person running the business, like everything falls on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no passing the blame. There's, if you don't get up, if you don't write this blog post, if you don't, send out the product, if you don't do this, if you don't, attend the event, like it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an extreme lesson after working, at companies for, 10 years leading up to that, and personal responsibility and just like everything that you need to do. And also taught me like what I'm good at, what I ain't good at. Like I wasn't good at the selling part of things.
Mm-hmm.
I was better at writing. I was better at, all these other kind of things that come with it. I love like dealing with actual customers and solving customer problems and, but like actually going to conferences and talking to people. Oh God, that was the most painful thing ever. Like it's still to this day.
It's like an introvert's worst nightmare.
It totally is. It
Mm-hmm.
totally is. And I never even thought of myself. I'm the kind of person. So funny. I was just talking to my kids about this. we were passing by something, just driving in Sunnyvale, which is close to her. And I don't know if it's the headquarters, but all of a sudden I look on like Google Maps and I'm like, oh, it says Myers-Briggs. It's like literally the Myers-Briggs. I don't know if it's a headquarter, an office
Yeah.
or something. And my kids were like, what's Myers-Briggs? I'm like, let me tell you about it. Like, it's a thing I always hated Myers-Briggs. I will just say that out there just for everybody. I'm sure I'm
Yeah.
making at least half of your audience really mad by saying that. But whenever I would,
Say
I would
whatever.
I would get a different result because I was like, I don't even know how to answer these questions. Like,
Mhm.
do I like to be messy or do I like to be clean? Like, I don't know. Like, just whatever. Like, I don't know how to answer these things. And even introvert, extrovert, it
Mhm.
was really hard for me to say, like, well, what is it that I am? I think that was the first time I actually realized, oh, I can do talks like this all day. I
Mhm.
can get up on a stage in front of 1,000 people and give a talk, like no problem.
Mhm.
But like where I get nervous is after that talk, if I'm just like sitting around like at a table and uh, you know, don't know what to say or like I don't know how to approach like that's actually for me. So I'm like, oh well, maybe I am an introvert. Like so yes, that was I found out that it was my greatest nightmare, just like you said, of like selling at conferences.
I think anybody who like hears a story right now would never think that you would be that type of person. Like
Yeah.
when you said I can stand up and talk to 1,000 people without, and then to have some sit down and then have somebody come and have a conversation with me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, getting in front of a crowd does not phase me at all. I think it used to a little bit, but like now I'm quite comfortable in my own skin to do that. And frankly, I kind of like it. I'm actually much more comfortable doing that than I would be, just having and it, like look with friends or whatever else, but it's usually like strangers or pseudo strangers or whatever it might be, or having to approach somebody to do something. Oh God, that's my greatest nightmare. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is, but I know I'm not the only one out there who is like that. Like I've heard people that like you're right. It's people would say, "Oh, you talk to all these people, but you're an introvert? Like how could that be?" Like it's exhausting for me to have to go to talk to individuals like that.
It is exhausting. I think when people look at us, our job is talking, and then
Yeah.
people would be surprised at how much time I need alone. Like I can
Yeah.
have 5 days of isolation without talking to anybody.
I'd be totally fine with that
I
too.
would be totally fine. And it's like, well, how can you be like that? It's our energy. It's where our energy is
Yeah.
spent.
That's right.
And yeah, energy is important. So how did you get to where you are? So you got your MBA, you became a solo entrepreneur, and what happened after being a solo entrepreneur when you realize this is a lot of responsibility and accountability?
Yeah. The short answer is baby happened. So I had my first kid with my wife, 2011, and
Okay.
it's one of those things that I'm like, oh God, I got a kid. I'm not making any money. I'm losing money. I was doing some consulting on the side to make some cash or whatever, but it was completely unrelated to the actual business. Um, so that honestly was the push. I live in Santa Clara. I'm very close to the PayPal offices.
Mm.
PayPal, I had from my MBA. I actually had a fair amount of people who worked at PayPal or eBay who owned PayPal at the time, and heard about an opportunity joining the mobile team. Back when 2011, like mobile was its own separate thing within companies, a weird little unit of folks. I had been a PayPal customer for, since they were bribing people with, 10, $20 to sign up accounts way back in the day. And, all those things lined up. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should just try for this.
Yeah.
And I think it was I think I only interviewed like a couple different places. Uh, I was dangerously unqualified to get that job at PayPal, but they hired me. As I always tell people, like two pro tips, like before your interview, One, it was a friend of a friend of a friend who knew the hiring manager. And I did everything I could to get to that person, to talk directly to the hiring manager. Never, ever, ever just like submit a resume on a website. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just goes into the ether. It's like you need to find a way to have a personal relationship with whoever that hiring manager is. It's a lot more effort to do that. But as I've hired dozens, I don't know, hundreds of people, I don't even know. Um, I will tell you, like, that personal connection, that person finding me and getting to me is almost like part of the test.
Mm-hmm.
In this world of technology and one click resume uploads and all this kind of stuff, no, it's still like that personal connection matters. And the second thing I would say that got me in was like I listened to the last probably two earnings calls, and I was a finance background, so I knew how to interpret an earnings call. Um, and so I just went in there and I was able to kind of talk the talk. Even though I didn't know payments, I used their language. I asked how their specific projects of the people who were interviewing me tied to the bigger strategic goals that the company had. And that was really helpful. And for people today who are watching this and like, well, I can't do that. I'm not a finance person. Uh, Take a transcript of an earnings call. They're almost all available for free somewhere online. Just find that if
Mm-hmm.
you're going to interview at a public company, and then put it into Claude, put it in ChatGPT, and say, hey, like, give me the high level takeaways or explain this to me. I'm a sales background. I don't know finance. Explain this to me and how could this apply to this type of sales job? And it will really help you. But I did that. I knew I had some numbers in the back of my head from there. So I was actually able to quote a few numbers as well, like when appropriate. And, um, it seems like you know the company almost better than the people who are working there when you can do that. Because most people in companies like this do not listen to their own company's earnings calls.
Why would you, right?
Right, exactly. They're worried on their project,
Like, I
whatever.
just work here. I don't care.
Exactly. I mean, so like they're focused on their own project, but coming in there, it just gave me this broader perspective. And I'm like, and they're like, oh, this guy seems pretty good. Let's hire him, even though I was totally unqualified for all the things that I was going to do. Um, but they saw something in that.
That's an amazing story. So for anybody who's watching this, it's about connection and confidence.
Yes, yes. And not overconfidence.
Mhm.
Like, so I think I balance that. Yeah, I probably left one part out there. I sort of balance the, hey, I understand your company and I have a lot of questions about it. There's a lot of things I don't know. So you want to show some level of humility. The last thing in the world
Mhm.
you want to do is come in and like, hey, I should be CEO. I should be running this place. I listen to your earnings calls. Like you want to do that. But also one of the things I talked about was how I failed miserably at the business that I was leaving, like my own startup. I
Mhm.
talked about that at length of all the ways I went wrong, like
Mhm.
all the things that I did wrong, all the way the site got hacked, all this stuff that I learned from that. I talked very openly about that, and I will say that it probably did portray a level of confidence in doing that as well,
Mhm.
saying like, "Hey, I know I could have done things better. I know that, and I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not afraid to say like, "Hey, I screwed up, but this is what I would do better, differently this time, or in a different situation." So yeah, maybe that does tie ultimately back to confidence too.
Yeah. You showed confidence in a willingness to learn.
100%. 100%.
Mhm.
And that's a skill even today, much more than 14 years ago. You need to be whatever job it is that you're applying to, like in the world of AI and where we're going right now, things are going to be changing much, much faster than they have in the past.
Mhm.
I was on another podcast recently, and I'll put this out there. This was kind of a hot take that I had. And after thinking about it, I'm like, I stand by it.
Okay.
Uh, if you go back 1500, if you look over the last 150 years, so if you go back to 1875, uh, the world has probably changed more in the last 150 years than it has in the 1500 years before that.
Mhm.
Like it was just, if you woke up in the year like 300 versus the year 1800, the world's not
Yeah.
ultimately. Some ways it was steam
Mhm.
engine, all this other kind of stuff. Sure, but like you can understand it, and that wasn't something that people were exposed to. But like 1875 to 2025, holy cow, very different world that you have there.
Mhm.
I think that just using a base 10 here, I think the world in 15 years from now. So if you go to 2040, I think it's going to be vastly different than
Mhm.
today. It might change more than the world changed in the last 150 years. Um, just the progress that we're seeing in AI, what that might lead to. It's not going to change things overnight, but things are going to start happening. And that's one thing. So if you're applying for a job, if you want to get hired by somebody, you go in there and you say, "Hey, I got," you know, if nothing else to prove to them, to prove that you're nimble, that you're curious, that you're willing to take on new tasks, that you're willing and able to learn, because your job that you're being hired into today is probably vastly different than what that job is going to look like in 12 months, is what it's going to look like in 24 months. It's going to continually
Mhm.
evolve. And if you're somebody who's like, I can do that and nothing else, versus
Mhm.
do that and grow and change and improve the job and improve all that stuff, like that is going to be the thing that folks will hire you for.
Mhm. Do you feel like people should be trained in AI in some form of capacity?
Yes, but how I would define train is
Mhm.
different. So currently, fast forwarding to today, I'm at San Diego State University. There's an AI center there, and I'm a
Mm.
visiting fellow at the school. So I get to, teach AI classes and all this other kind of stuff. But what I often tell people is it's not necessary for most people out there to actually take classes.
Mm.
The best way to learn AI, and when we're talking AI, I'm talking about generative AI, ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, Llama, all these things. The best way to learn those is just to use them. It's as simple as that. Um, Back in the day, they used to have classes like teaching people how to use Google, teaching, all these kind of things. And like,
Mhm.
we look at it like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like Googling used to be an actual skill. And like, there's some
Yeah.
things like, with AI, look, the number one thing I'd say is just use it. Like,
Mhm.
use it for your personal life. Use it to. I plan most of my vacation using ChatGPT and things like that. And then, you know what? It was awesome to be able to do.
Mhm.
Use it, as much as you can. Use it as a default. Set your homepage on your browser to that. When you're in the car, just start talking to, OpenAI. They have their voice mode that they have within ChatGPT. It's amazing to be able to talk to. Just use that as a default. And where you fall short, sign up for a couple newsletters, read a couple blog posts, look at a couple of YouTube videos. If you can do that,
Mhm.
you're going to be vastly ahead of the game right there.
Mhm. Yeah. How did you get into AI? Because
Yeah.
you got hired at PayPal,
Yeah.
and how long were you there, and what was your role, if you are able to talk about that?
Oh, of course. I can know about everything. Yeah. I was at PayPal for 11 years total. It was amazing. So my first half, I like to break it into two halves. So first half at PayPal was very much focused on product. And for people not at the technology world, it's kind of the people who like kind of define what the app or whatever it is going to look like. What's the user experience going to be? It's working with designers, it's working with engineers, and so forth. And I had different roles: product marketing, product launch, product manager, product analytics, all these different things in that product world in my first half. One of the cool things I got to do was work on a very next generation product called PayPal Beacon, which I'm sure nobody out there has ever heard of. Because
PayPal Beacon?
Beacon
Okay.
is like a flashing light type thing.
Yeah.
It was actually a hardware product that we launched in 2013, so 12 years ago, that would allow you to walk into so basically a retailer would have this little piece of
Mhm.
hardware built by PayPal in a store. You'd walk in there with your phone, and the phone would passively talk to the hardware, and would allow for things like you could basically pay for your coffee without even taking your phone out of your pocket or your purse. You wouldn't even need to touch it. You can even have it pointing out the window of the place. So if it was a Starbucks or something and it sees a car drive up into there, it would actually then, it could trigger like, oh, Mike's here. I'm going to order ahead and start making his coffee now before he even gets out of the car because I could detect his phone. It was cool technology. It was really cool technology. And
That sounds very advanced.
it was very advanced. We actually, so it was using a new, I don't even know what Bluetooth is on. It was using Bluetooth 4.0. It was a brand new standard. It was just getting added to devices at that time. It's funny. The lead engineer, who was brilliant working on this, I remember would actually drive to Cupertino, which is just down the street. That's where Apple's headquarters are.
Mhm.
He was meeting with the team working on the iPhone because they were having trouble with Bluetooth 4.0, and he was
Mhm.
actually helping them out to be able to integrate this. So like he was very much an expert in this. He knew everything it could do. He was literally helping out the iPhone people because if it wasn't working on iPhones and Android devices and things like that, it wouldn't be working in our stores. And we were very much ahead of the game with that. But it was super exciting. So I was working on an emerging tech. Again, 2013, this was like revolutionary.
Mhm.
We're testing this on Stanford campus. So Stanford University is right down the road as well in Palo Alto. They have this University Avenue. There were 3 retailers we had relationships with at PayPal, and I worked with them, and I got these things in their stores so people can actually come in with the app and they could do that. And we did this with employees and we got it to work, and I would literally bring like a truck full of employees on Friday there just to see if this would work. I'd get, comp them all their meals. We were just testing. Then we started to test it with the actual students that were there. And uh I would say like every single student would
Mhm.
like, and they're like, why should I not just use my credit card? They're like, what's the point of this technology? It was 2013. It was a different time. And even though this was like one of the most technologically focused campuses in the world, we were solving a technological problem. We weren't solving the customer's problem at all. And like all these, and we knew if this wouldn't work on Stanford, it was pretty clear it wasn't going to work in the middle of America. It wasn't going to work anywhere else. If the tech savvy people were this like, well, why should I just not use my credit card? And in the United States, we've been habituated over the last 60 years to just swipe a credit card. They've made it really
Mhm.
easy to do that. And frankly, the only thing that got people to start using NFC payments, at least in the US, was COVID. Because
Mhm.
people are afraid to put, oh my God, what if my card touches that grimy machine or whatever? Like that.
Mhm.
That was the thing that finally got hands-free payments to kick off. Was COVID, which was years and years later. So all of that said, that was my intro to technology at PayPal. That got me working on a lot of other cool tech projects. And when PayPal got separated from eBay, I had a very unique opportunity to kind of create, in quotes, and define what innovation was going to be for the new company, and had got to form this little innovation group, which I did for like the next 6 years that I was there. Had an amazing time, like the best job I could have possibly asked for or looked for in frankly any company. And that's what brought me like into the world of AI, because I got to work on like all new and emerging technologies, blockchain, augmented reality stuff, AI, anything that was kind of weird and on the fringes, was where that innovation group got to participate, and it was super fun. And and AI and machine learning, as we called it much more back then,
Mhm.
was something PayPal's been doing for years, just out of necessity,
Mhm.
because you couldn't. PayPal has millions and billions of transactions and volume going through the network. You can't use traditional computing to find bad guys. And
Mhm.
so our security teams would be using machine learning techniques to do that. So really at its core, the company was very good at doing that. And that's started to spread to other parts of the business. And so like that's how I got really excited about it and more involved and so forth. And that's what carried me to where I'm at today.
Wow. It sounds like you all were so ahead of your time.
Yeah, and sometimes being ahead of your time isn't good. so, so
Yeah.
I mean, so like honestly, this is one thing that happens in venture capital funding. I was actually just listening to a pitch earlier today um, of a company that was trying to sell smart shoes. And one of the things was they were saying they actually have people from Nike who are as part of that company. And they were saying, yeah, Nike tried to do this 20 years ago and they couldn't. And frankly, they got burned. And like Nike hasn't really focused this much on doing the smart shoe technology in the last 20 years to have this fully integrated smart shoe. Because you know what? In 2005 or whatever exact year it was just way too early. So yeah, so being ahead of your time isn't always the right thing. It's getting the timing exactly right is what leads you to success.
Was that something that you all like you learned that okay, maybe being ahead of the time isn't all that I don't say great, but okay, aligned. Like being ahead of the time, it's not always aligned. Like I feel like you guys are like inventors. I think of like the great inventors who invented things, and people are just like, y'all are crazy. Y'all are crazy. Did it feel like that at times?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it totally at times it did, especially even within the company. Like, what are you guys? I mean, look, the mobile team felt like that at the time. When I joined PayPal in mobile, I remember we did less than $1 billion of mobile transactions in 2010. And I remember we had some presentation we were using internally that said something like we would do $50 billion by 2015 or something like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no way we're going to grow this thing like 50x in this time. And it just seemed, and what I remember is like, whatever that, and I might be not getting the numbers slightly off, but it's similar magnitude. We actually beat that. Like, just seeing that over time happen.
Really?
It was one of those things like, it even seemed crazy to me as part of that. But if you think about how mobile just changed everything, um, it was somewhat obvious it was going to be a game changer at the time. But even just being part of it, like fully grasping the magnitude, it's really hard to do. Which is why if you look at AI today
Mm-hmm.
and what AI has the potential for, it's really hard to grasp how that is going to change the world and in what ways it is going to do that. But by giving the tools so that, frankly, anybody anywhere can use this. Like back when I was at PayPal, the only people who were doing stuff in AI were the machine learning engineers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had to be schooled. You were probably getting paid like $500,000 a year just for starters, as a
See
highly
my
qualified
eyes just
engineer
like
who was
whoa.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a very specific skill. But now anybody for $20 a month can
Mhm.
buy ChatGPT and have access to models that are even stronger than the things that these people were using years ago. And like, what is the unlock that is going to bring? Like, that's the thing. Like, for me, who spends his days thinking about that, I can't even think. It feels much bigger than what mobile was to me in 2011 when I was starting at PayPal. And to see where that took us, like this is going to be probably even bigger than that. And it's just unfathomable.
Mhm. So there's a lot of positivity, and of course, there's also a lot of like, how do I say this? A lot of I don't want to say fear, but people, when there's
Yeah.
something new, there's always the pushback. What kind of pushback have you heard, or do you feel that people have about AI?
I mean, look, first and foremost, I think it's jobs. I
Hmm.
think jobs is serious. We're seeing increased unemployment in the tech sector at a rate higher than what is in the rest of the economy right now.
Yeah,
That's what the
a lot of
latest
tech
labor report.
layoffs.
A lot of tech layoffs, especially in engineering type roles.
Hmm.
Um, and the people who are using AI the most are engineers. That is where the biggest benefit has been. That is, the tools that are out there today. I think Sam Altman at OpenAI has said they're using an internal tool that is something like the top. You often have these tests for coders,
Mhm.
and the tools they're using in-house today, supposedly, would make it like the 50th or 75th best coder in the entire world. Like this tool. And again, that's infinite. And like once you have a tool that could do that, you could replicate that a billion times. Like
Mhm.
it's possible to do that as long as you have like, the GPU power to do that. He's
Mhm.
saying by the end of the year, it'll probably be the best coder in the world. Well,
2025?
yeah, by end of the year 2025 is what he
Oh,
said. Like,
okay.
look, he's a salesman. I mean, so like, I don't know if that's true, but I do know,
Excuse me, I had to laugh
again,
on
just
that. Mhm.
using these things, like he's probably like maybe he's building up a little bit, but he's probably not that far off. What you can build with these tools today in minutes. There's a great example. I forgot what publication wrote about it in the last few weeks, but
Mhm.
there was a Twitter thread. Somebody was talking about, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a smart TikTok? Like, what if you took Wikipedia and made that into TikTok? And kind of combine those two things, so you can kind of just scroll through and just see like random things, and you could dive
Mhm.
deeper into Wikipedia and you could really learn something. This was a Twitter thread that started and kind of went back and forth a little bit, and somebody was able to use, I don't know if it was Claude or Cursor or which tool it was, but within 90 minutes they built a working prototype that everyone was able to then use and play with. And it's live in the App Store now. Like you could, like anybody can just do this. I think it's called like Wiki Talk or something like that,
Oh my
to
gosh.
actually see that. And yeah, that would have taken a heck of a lot more time than 90 minutes to do in the past. Now, I'm not saying that AI is going to destroy all jobs, but there is going to be disruption.
Mhm.
Absolutely going to be disruption. And, especially for kind of the mid-level jobs, probably entry-level jobs, mid-level, like, those are the ones that are much at risk now.
Mhm.
And so like that to me is the most valid concern that people have, because I think we're already starting to see that. And as these tools get better, as they get more widely accepted, that is going to change things. 18 months ago, when I was talking to students at the university about what jobs were out there for them, what I would tell them was, you don't have to worry. Like, just learn these AI tools, go start at a company, and you're going to be so darn valuable. You're going to just teach everyone else at the company how to use these tools, and they're going to love you.
Mhm.
That was honestly what I was telling people, back in 2023. 2025, like my it's changed. I'm like, yeah, I
Mhm.
don't, I don't know for entry level jobs. Like internships seem to be down. Like all these things seem to be down. Like there's less hiring, and it's not for economic reasons. I think it's because of productivity and efficiency reasons for companies that use these tools. So it's tougher out there, and it will take time before we really normalize and figure out, okay, well, what are the right jobs? What are the best jobs for people to be having? And that's why I say more and more, the one thing you can do is just learn how to use these things, learn
Mhm.
how to use them better, and maybe even just go ahead and start something yourself. I
Mhm.
do see more company creation coming in the future, where there might be one or two person companies. So, like if I wanted to relaunch my comic thing that I was talking about before, I could probably do that for, probably 10% of the cost it
Mhm.
cost me to do that 15 years ago, if
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Um, it's so much more cost, it's so much less costly, so much more efficient to build things today. The one thing that I think is going to be consistent in the short to medium term is there's going to be more entrepreneurial opportunities out there for people by using these tools and using them effectively.
Mhm. I think that's a positive thing. It almost sounds like so a lot of these people are engineers that used to do this, like the coding, engineering. Is that correct?
That are using the tools now, more
That
effectively.
built this, like built that
Oh yeah,
built.
yeah, building on the
Okay.
back end, but like it's small. Like the amount of people like OpenAI employees is like in the thousands. So,
Hmm.
if you think about that, Midjourney is a great example. So Midjourney is probably one of the better image generation tools out there. I don't know what the number is today, but reportedly there were about 20 people working at the company. Maybe it's 50, and they're probably already getting hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue from people getting a subscription to Midjourney. So yes, there are people who are building these tools who are highly, highly advanced, very well paid, but the tools have such scale that they're, relatively speaking, there aren't very many of those jobs.
Okay.
If you're one of the best coders in the world, if you know this stuff, you're going to be fine. If, the other, it's the vast majority of people who are good, but maybe not the greatest. Like, what are the opportunities for those folks?
Wow. Do you think AI can take over for human interaction?
I think it already is in many
Okay.
places, frankly. I think you can look at stuff like customer service. You can do a really darn good job with that. I was testing something out. This is probably about a year ago,
Okay.
where it was like a doctor's office. You call up and you say, "Hey, I have an appointment. It's this. I need to reschedule it. This is the time, blah, blah, blah," going back and forth with it and all that. And it was an AI that I was talking to. And again, this was just a test, but like, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's a great use case. And frankly, if I'm a doctor's office, like that's probably a better use of my employees' time to have an AI doing that so they could do more of this other stuff or whatever. So, with a lot of this, it's going to be upskilling the work that humans are actually going to be doing. But at some point, is it going to be able to do all of that work? I don't know. But like for human interaction, there's something in the AI world that hopefully a lot of folks have heard of. It's called the Turing test.
The
The
turning?
Turing. So it's Alan Turing, who
Oh, okay.
is there's that Benedict Cumberbatch movie that
Oh, yes.
he was Alan Turing in there, as a Code Breakers, I think, or something like that was the name of it. But like Alan Turing is one of the godfathers of AI from back in the 40s and 50s. And the Turing test was effectively you are a human, and on the other side, you're talking to something, and you don't know if it's an AI or if it's a person. And this was kind of the test to basically tell, well, could you tell if it's a person or an AI? And frankly, for the last, 70 years or so, it was pretty easy to break that. There's no way to tell anymore. Like if you're just doing this via a chat, I would say it's less than a coin flip on whether or not you are going to be able to tell if it's an AI or not. Yeah, there's probably some ways to do that. But the Turing test has largely been broken with relatively little fanfare. And, and that's over text. There are companies like 11 Labs out there. I've cloned my own voice that, can give you very realistic sounding voices that are pretty much undecipherable between an actual person. So you can layer these technologies together. You can even make digital clones of someone. Like theoretically, I could be a clone right now talking to you all as part of yeah, and I could be doing 50 different podcasts at the same time. So.
You could be doing plenty of that. That kind of sounds nice. I could be doing like the fake person could be doing all the stuff that I don't want to do. So not that I will ever do that, people, but
yeah, no, but those are the things that we're like approaching in this future. Like, what is that going to look like? What is that going to mean? But for like getting back to your question, for actual interaction, it's pretty darn good right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about human emotion?
So I think we can. The thing is, like, I don't know how good humans are at really detecting true emotion versus fake emotion. Like, there's different levels that we have. We all think we're good at it, but it's sometimes hard to detect that. We are wired in so many ways to see humans and human-like traits in things around us. We look to the moon at night and we see a face in it. We see that in a piece of burnt toast that looks like whatever it might be. Like we see human traits everywhere because that's how our brains are actually wired. So if you have a machine that has been programmed to mimic those sort of things, our brains are wired to see that in there. And
Mhm.
that is one of the things. Like, even if I'm not worried about AI consciousness as much as I'm worried about humans perceiving AI consciousness.
Mhm.
And to me, like, this is the bigger test, is like, what percentage of humans believe that AI is conscious than actually AI achieving consciousness, which I don't know or really think that it ever truly can achieve. But if people believe that, um, what does that start to change? Like, we
Mhm.
see emotion in things that don't have emotion.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think it can frankly fool us. And I think it already does. And I think it will only get better and better at doing things like that.
Mhm. Is that a good thing?
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, look, there's good applications for that.
Yeah.
I think if I'm, you know, I say I want to get therapy or
Mhm.
something like that. If I'm talking to an AI and I know I'm talking to an AI, and an AI says, "Boy, that really stinks," or "Man, I feel for you there," or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
and it makes me feel better, I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Or,
Yeah.
I think the problem comes in when you think you're talking to a human and it ain't a human. The
Mm.
issue of disclosure, I think that is probably what the biggest problem is going to be. Google many years ago demoed a thing, and it was live. I have used it, but I haven't seen it in a while, where you could call up a restaurant and say, "Hey, can you book a thing?" So it's an AI that you're using to book something at a restaurant that only takes phone reservations. So it's kind of the
Mhm.
opposite of what I said before with the dental exam.
Mhm.
um, and I think in the initial version it didn't actually say, "Hey, this is an AI talking." They added that in. And I think that's important. I think it's
Yeah.
actually important for us to know whether it's a human or an AI, because frankly, in many ways, it's going to be impossible for us to tell. And when it's
Mhm.
impossible for us to tell, like, there's just, and again, there's always going to be bad actors in all of this.
Mhm.
But I think whenever we can, I think it's going to be super important to just give that disclosure.
Yeah. It's like AI catfishing.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Look, I think one of the pieces I wrote about just recently in my LinkedIn blog was how every family should have a secret password, because it doesn't take a lot. You could clone a voice with about 30 seconds of audio.
Mhm.
For anybody who's ever posted anything on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be, or YouTube, or frankly even called up a bank that recorded your call or something like that,
Mhm.
your voice is out there. And that voice can be taken, and that voice could be manipulated to say, frankly, anything that wants to be said. Like,
Mhm.
that's easy to have done nowadays. You could then take that and say, hey, grandma, like, I need you to send $500, or I need you to send this, or I need you to do this, or whatever it might be. Like, I'm in trouble and I need your help. Please do this now. Look, when your defenses are down, like, these are like things that like scammers love that. And so, like, yes,
Mhm.
I see those tools. And the one thing I know about is the oldest technique. It's like, if you just have a secret code within your family, and this grandma knows that unless you say rutabaga, it
Mhm.
ain't that, and you only share that amongst your family, well, then, that's not it. You
Mhm.
worry about that kind of stuff. So, like, that's one thing I said very seriously to the people who read my blog. I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
our family has this. Every family actually should have this,
Mhm.
because we're living in a point where somebody might call, and if you don't know the number, or you can even mimic a number, like, you don't know who's actually calling you. They're
Mhm.
asking for something that seems serious, seems life threatening, seems whatever it might be. There probably should be a special word that they say that's going to convey that.
Mhm. Speaking of history, when you said 1870, 150, I was actually thinking 1850. 50. And then I'm like, oh yeah, we're in 2025. So but talking about all of this kind of really reminds me of the industrial era
Yeah. Yeah.
where we replaced like the agriculture with machines and
Yeah.
everything. And I feel like that's what AI is doing
Yeah.
with the human labor.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, if you looked at employment in 1870s or whatever, it is going to be, still 90 something percent farmers. If you look at employment today, it is, 1% farmers with, probably crop yields that are 10x what they used to be or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I mean, we have vastly more efficient, vastly more productive. Over nutrition is a bigger problem in our world than undernutrition is. Um, what is AI going to bring? How is it going to reshape what jobs look like? All this other kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. If we get to the point, and I think we might, that an AI on your computer that you have accessible for, let's say, a couple $100 a month is equivalent to the best researcher, the best engineer, the best salesperson, the best writer, the best everything. When you have that at your fingertips, like, what does that lead to? And where does that leave us as
Mm-hmm.
humans? And I don't know the answer to that. Like some things are still going to exist. I
Mm-hmm.
just went to the NBA All-Star game this past weekend. It was up here in San Francisco. I took my son, paid way too much money for a ticket to go to this game, but it was fun. And why did we pay way too much money to go see that thing? Because we got to see like humanity at its best. We got to
Right.
see Steph Curry and a whole bunch of people shooting basketballs from really far away, going between their legs, doing these things that any robot can probably do better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would have zero interest in paying any money to see a robot do that. I want to see a human do that. Is that going to change in the age of AI? Probably not. No, I mean, like we're attracted to humans. We're
Mm-hmm.
attracted to the shortcomings of that. It's like just because we have built cars that we drive faster in every single day than the fastest human being doesn't mean it's not super exciting for us to see a human being run really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not to say there's going to be no jobs, like artisan things that are proven to be made by humans are maybe going to have more weight in this world or whatever it might be. Um, it's just our economy today is not built on that. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going to look like in the future. Like I don't think anybody's going to come out and see me play basketball on my hoop or anything like that. I can't
You're gonna be at the All Star.
yeah, I'm not like I don't know what the equivalent is for me to do that. Where it's like so, and there's only so much time and so much interest that people have in that. So like, I don't know what the world will look like, how it will change, but it is going to, and we're all going to be a witness to that.
It's the word revolution. Do you feel like that's too strong of a word? Like we're in
No,
the
I know.
revolution.
No. I think we are in the middle of a revolution. I think this is going to change um, more than mobile, more than the internet, frankly, more than just the industrial age. Like this is a huge, huge impact. And I think largely for the benefit. I think
Mhm,
it is a net good for us that this is happening. I
mhm,
really do. I think the benefits in health, I think the benefits in wellness in our society and like look, and again, if anybody's done customer service jobs can be pretty miserable too. I mean, look,
I've done it.
yeah, I mean, like it is not, but like it is a job.
Mhm,
It's an honorable job. It is a job that pays.
mhm,
And so, what will those folks have an opportunity to do with that? I don't know. I truly don't know. But it is a revolution that we're going into.
mhm. Thoughts. So, a lot of people are being laid off in the tech industry, and yet at the same time can also create a lot because of AI.
Sorry, a lot.
Like jobs, like tech jobs,
Yes.
are being laid off. And as you and I are talking, being solo entrepreneur, and I also think that it can also create a lot of innovation and ideas for more people to create jobs too, though.
Yes, look, 100%. There is gonna be, and that's why I do think like being an entrepreneur now is the best time ever to be an
Agreed.
entrepreneur because you're gonna be
Agreed.
able to start something. The only thing is like I don't know how many people you're gonna need to hire. You
Mm-hmm.
know, years ago you may have hired 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know. Would you have to hire two? Would you have to? It's just going to be less. I think there are going
Yeah.
to be more businesses starting. I think those businesses are going to be smaller. I think they're going to be using AI to do more stuff as part of those businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Future that we're entering, I don't know what it is going to look like for for actual jobs, but I think for business creation, there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be more businesses. They're probably going to be smaller businesses than
Mm-hmm.
what we had before because what used to take a bunch of employees to do stuff will probably have an AI doing more and more of that. But I think businesses are going to be smaller. I think they're going to be more niche. They're going to be able to focus much more highly on what your customer's problem is. And there's going to be effectively a CEO directing those businesses in many ways. I think it's going to be a golden time for the solopreneur where you can actually have, an AI as your employees. And, you probably will have, depending on the type of business, you probably have some humans in there that are going to be augmenting this and helping and adding color and doing whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not going to be as many humans in these businesses that we had before. And then, but what does the employment question really look like?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like, are we going to be at a higher perpetual unemployment? Maybe. Um, I don't know how this is all going to shake out, but what I do know is it's going to be bumpy in between there. Like the transition from an agricultural to an industrial economy, we got there, but
Mm-hmm.
clean, there's a lot of bumps in the road. And if you're living through that, if you're the person who can't find a job, who whatever, like it
Mm-hmm.
ain't. And we're going from an industrial computer age to this AI age. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it'd be just as bumpy as what we've experienced in the past, if not probably much more.
Yeah. When you were talking about that, that kind of actually sounds nice. Having a team where you don't have to have 30, 40, 50 people. Maybe it's a team of five.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think, look, I think there is, we talked about some of the examples in the AI world. People are actually able to do more with less. I think it's not easy to manage a bunch of people. Like,
No,
it's hard
no.
to do that.
It is hard. I can
And
barely manage myself.
exactly, same. Um, and in the world of AI, like you're going to have these beings, AI, whatever you want to call them, that never forgets. They can work 24/7. They can do all this stuff, and they're going to be doing this in service to you, to your business, to your customers, whatever it might be. Um, I mean, there's a lot of positives to that. There's a lot of good that comes to that to be able to be like, oh my gosh, I could actually start a business that does this and like whatever, and have these things guided. Like that's great. I do think
Mhm.
that is a great thing. Um, but I don't know if we're going to be a country of 350 million solopreneurs. Like
Mhm.
I don't think there's like the math doesn't math on that. Of
Yeah.
like there's probably not gonna be that many. So again, it's I think there's a lot of positives for
Mhm.
people who do have an entrepreneurial bend. There
Mhm.
is a wonderful opportunity ahead for all of us, no matter what it is that you want to build.
Mhm.
But like for those who might not be as entrepreneurial, it's gonna be tougher.
Right. Yeah. So, what are your final words about AI or, people who are still hesitant about AI?
Here's the reality: it's going to happen whether you are hesitant or not. That's the first
Mhm.
thing I would say. So, um, even if you don't like it, even if you're like, oh, I wish we could go back to whatever a simpler time. Like we every generation wants to go back to a simpler time that didn't
Right.
like
Millennials and Gen X, we all want the 90s or the 80s.
I just want to listen to Soul Asylum and Pearl Jam music all day.
Right.
Thought it
Yeah.
was
The real
cool by this
music.
generation by doing that. Yeah,
Right.
of course we all want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I threw out Soul Asylum because I think they're a Minneapolis band. I was trying, like literally in my brain, and I might be wrong with that. They might be from Seattle
Awesome.
as well, but I
Okay.
was like, my brain really quick was like, boy, is there a Minneapolis band I can reference from the '90s? I'm like, I thought there were one, but I actually know. But like, but where was I going with this? Where was I?
About how each generation is always like we're always nostalgic about
Oh yes,
change.
yes. Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, we're
Therapy.
always, yeah, we're always nostalgic for like what could have been. But like, here's the reality: the advice that I have for people. Um, Use these tools. Use them for the good of you, for the good of your business, for the good of your family, whatever it is. Like use them. They're out there. They like the $20 a month for ChatGPT or Claude or whatever that you could pay to get full service of this thing is the best bargain that I could possibly think of out there because there's so much that you could do with this. And once you start using it, you'll start to realize, oh my gosh, it could help with this. It could help with my kids studying. It could help with this. It could be a foreign language tutor for me to help me learn this. So whatever it is that you want to do, um, these things are really darn good at that. The things that you want to do, the things that you're bad
Mhm.
joy in your life. A great example of this is actually from the movie Her. And it's a movie talked about in AI circles a lot. And I wrote about it last year. I did this whole summer of AI movies I was writing about. And the one takeaway that I think most people miss in Her is that people do have jobs in this future, but the jobs are all creative jobs. Like they have humans that are working for. They have computers that are working for the humans. So Joaquin Phoenix in the movie, his job is actually writing cards and things like that. He will dictate it. The computer writes in script. It does all this other stuff for him, but he is the one that's actually creating that.
Mhm.
Amy Adams is like a documentary filmmaker. They're all super creative. They're people that are working their passion. Um, all the stuff that frankly they don't want to do. Now,
Mhm.
look, the movie's also super dark. Like he falls in love with a thing, and like the AI runs off, is bored with them. Like there's a lot of dark, but like that is the one nugget I take away from that movie of like, my God, if we could actually live in a future that has that snippet where we can be doing the creative stuff, the things that we love. And yeah, maybe if a machine can do it better, do you know what? It doesn't matter because I'm doing this because I love
Mhm.
thing. Like that's the stuff that's special.
Yeah. 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 So embrace AI. Learn how to work with it.
Absolutely. Have it improve and help you in whatever ways you need that help, that you need that assistance. It's a
Mhm.
tool. It's a tool unlike any other tool that we've seen before.
Mhm. Yeah. Last question for you.
Sure.
What does owning it mean to you?
Mm. Um, wow. Owning it is just taking responsibility. Just like literally just saying like, hey guys, I got this. When you and your team win, you put your team in front of you. You say like these are the most amazing people I've ever been. When you and your team lose, you take responsibility for your actions. You know, Steve Kerr, I'm talking basketball before. Steve Kerr, the coach of the Warriors, is as much as us fans are he gets on our nerves, like he does that. Like it's a great example of that. It's like
Mhm.
if we lose, it's his fault. If we win, it's the team's success.
Mhm.
And to me, that's a great example of owning it.
Mhm. That's beautiful.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you, thank you,
Yeah.
and thank you for asking that too. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
an
No, that's like
important.
the one thing I asked. It's like owning it. So great conversation about AI, the positives, the reservations about it. And I think like with every revolution, with medication, technology, whatever, people are always going to be very reserved about it. But then we see what it can do for us. We see
Yeah.
how it can benefit all of us eventually. So yeah, so that's with AI. And so any final words that you want to say? Doesn't have to be about AI. It could be anything that you feel that is important.
No, I guess two things. One, on the AI side, yeah, just get out there, use the tools. If you don't know how to use the tools, ask the tools. Literally talk to it and say, "Hey, I don't like you, ChatGPT, but tell me how you can make my life better. Ask me some questions to do that. And whatever it might be. Like, again, these are not conscious beings. They don't take
Mhm.
offense to what you say. They don't get bored of you if you like ask the same question over and over again, or whatever it might be. So, you
Yeah.
know, have see how they can serve you, and because that's what these
Yeah.
tools should do. Um, and the second, everyone out there, own it,
Mhm.
whatever way you can. More importantly, like you should all own it out there. Like this is the future that we're going into, and whatever way you personally define it, you should all own it. So yes, that's how
I
I feel
love
about
that. Thank you. Just own it, people. Just own it. Yeah, yeah. And so for anybody who is interested in um connecting with Mike, we'll put all the information in your blog. Um yeah, so AI is changing, and you either I think again, you either go with it or you get left behind, and what does it mean to be left behind?
it. Yeah,
So
that's a perfect way to end this.
mhm.
Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, everybody, thank you for watching this. Mike, I had a great conversation about AI. Honestly, you opened up my, mind about AI, and I'm not gonna lie, I do use AI for work too. And at the same time, though, I know a lot of people have reservations, and I encourage everybody, your own pathway and owning it is about opening up your mind and staying curious and being willing to learn. And AI could probably, help you in ways that you never thought that you could. So
Yeah,
thank you, Mike, for being here. I learned a lot about AI. I learned a lot about the tech world too. For someone who's in therapy, listening to you talk about this is like, wow, okay. And, even though you may be behind then, if you have ideas, put it out there. It could be revolutionary and be very innovative. So thank you.
100%. No, I love the conversation. Paia, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. So, I never thought I'll say this, Mike, but for anybody who enjoyed this episode, please hit the like and subscribe button. Never thought I'll be saying this as part of my conversation. So, everybody, thank you. And I will see you all next time for owning it on the podcast here. So, everybody, take care.